Unmasking slave labor and corporate greed in today's global market. Discover how modern slave labor fuels corporate greed and why awareness is key to ethical consumerism in today's world. Why slave labor and corporate greed are still closer than you think. You ever notice how some things just don't sit right with you? Like we're living in the 21st century, yet products we buy every day could be the result of invisible chains, slave labor, not in some distant past, but right now. And it's all tangled up with corporate greed in a way that almost feels like no one wants us to see. I want to talk about that today. So here's the thing. When most people think about slave labor, the mind jumps to history books or crime dramas about the 1800s. But in reality, modern corporate giants often rely on seriously exploitative labor practices. It's not just shady factories somewhere far away. It's embedded in the global supply chains that keep prices low and profits sky high. Think about your favorite brands, the ones you trust. Behind those logos could be workers trapped in forced labor, miserable working conditions, or paid so little they can barely survive. And guess who benefits? Corporations raking in billions while turning a blind eye to human suffering. This is greed at a level that's hard to wrap your head around. But why does this persist? Partly because it's hidden. These companies outsource production to countries with weaker labor protections, or they rely on subcontractors who might be operating totally outside the law. Factories can churn out garments, gadgets, or even food products without inspectors ever setting foot inside. And the worst part? Consumers usually remain clueless because these practices are so deliberately buried. Now, add to this mix some of the darker corners of our world, government conspiracy theories and untrue allegations. Sometimes those distractions are used to deflect attention from really serious issues like corporate exploitation. For example, whistleblowers or activist groups who try to expose pharmaceutical profits being prioritized over ethics might get drowned out by sensational headlines or conspiracy talk. There's also the troubling fact that some companies lobby governments to keep labor laws weak or unenforced. It's a tangled web with many threads, but at its core, it's about money and power. The more profits swell for a few, the more invisible the suffering gets. And honestly, if we're not careful as consumers, our dollars keep the cycle going. But there's hope. Awareness is the first step. There are organizations fighting to bring light to these abuses, pushing for fair trade and ethical production. And we have more power than we sometimes think, whether by choosing brands that prioritize ethics or by demanding transparency. If this subject interests you, and you appreciate a good story that captures the tension between ruthless greed and moral courage, I highly recommend The Ultimate Frame by Andrew M. Semple. It's a thrilling novel that explores these themes in a way that's both gripping and eye-opening. Discover this thrilling novel by Andrew M. Semple today. It might just change the way you see the world and the products you bring into your home. At the end of the day, understanding the connection between slave labor and corporate greed isn't just for activists or experts. It affects us all because behind every item we buy, there's a story. Knowing that story matters.